So in the last meeting, we learned the art movement from the modern to the postmodern, the New York School, the abstract expressionist artist, and the pop artist in the 60s. So we're going to continue to see the 60s and 70s art today, like this. So we saw the abstract expressionist and the pop artist in the last meeting. And today we're going to see the rest of the art movement in the 60s and 70s, photorealism, minimalism, installation art, conceptual art, video art, and feminism. And we're going to see the postmodern art in the next meeting. So let's see the photorealism first. The pop art focus on imagery in the mass media inspired artists to look more closely at photograph. So in trend called photorealism, they began to paint what they saw in the photographs. This artist, the Chuck Close, is the most famous, the photorealist artist. He is an American painter, artist, and photographer. He makes massive scale photorealist portraits. Close often paints abstract portraits of himself and others, which hang in collections internationally. Close also creates photo portraits using a very large format camera. So I showed you this. Here's a self-portrait painting in the last week when you processed the self-portrait project, right? So this is this is a painting, the acrylic painting. The super realistic portrait paintings on large canvases are his representative style of art. Chuck Close had been known for his skillful brush work as a graduate student at Yale University. Close began a series of paintings derived from black and white photographs of a female nude, which he copied onto canvas and painted in color. As he explained in a 2009 interview, he made a choice in 1967 to make art hard for himself and force a personal artistic breakthrough by abandoning the paintbrush. So throughout his career, Chuck Close has expanded his contribution to portraiture through the mystery of such varied drawing, painting techniques as ink, graphite, pastel, watercolor, Conte crayon, fingerprint, and stamp pad ink on paper. And also printmaking techniques such as mezzotint, etching, woodcut, lino cuts, and silk screens, as well as handmade paper collage, Polaroid photographs, daguerreotypes, and jacquard tapestries. And now let's move on to the minimalism in 60s and 70s. So these are all the minimalism work. Looks very simple, right? So the minimalism is an art movement that began in post-World War II Western art most strongly with American visual art in the 1960s and early 1970s. The movement is often interpreted as a reaction against abstract expressionism and modernism. It anticipated contemporary post-minimal art practices, which extend or reflect on minimalism's original objectives. Donald Juist was an American artist associated with minimalism. In his work, Jude sought autonomy and clarity for constructed object and the space created by it. So he abandoned painting for sculpture in the early 1960s, like these sculptures. In his essay, Jude found a starting point for a new territory for American art and a simultaneous rejection of radical inherited European artistic values, these values being illusion and represented space as opposite to real space. Now let's see the installation. So installation art is an artistic genre of three-dimensional works that often are site-specific and designed to transform the perception of a space. So minimalist sculptures were shown carefully positioned like this in the architectural spaces of a museum or a gallery. So artists created installations and spaces conceived of as works of art or views to enter and experience. And let's see the conceptual art. So there was conceptual art emerged in 60s and 70s. Conceptual art is art in which ideas are paramount and the form that realizes those ideas is secondary, often lightweight or unremarkable. So conceptual art is art in which the concept or idea involved in the work take precedence over traditional aesthetic, technical, and material concerns. Conceptualism is not a style, but a way of thinking about art, and artists have put it to many different uses. So many conceptual artists worked with language for words when written take on a double life as image and idea. This is Yono.
Morning.
Good morning. This is Yoko Ono's conceptual work of art. So this is a conceptual artist book. The artist book is a work of art that is based on the idea of a book and what a book does. We accept that books are made of paper and bound and contain information. So the artist book plays on these truths. Now, let's move on to the new trend of the art in 60s and 70s, the video art. The portable video cameras were first made available to the general public in 1965, and the first two works of video art quickly followed within weeks of each other. One was by Andy Warhol, who had been asked by a magazine to experiment with one of the new devices. And the other one was by Namjoon Park, who recorded from a taxi his view of the papal motorcade during the Pope's historic visit to New York in 1965. So we're gonna see the Namjoon Park artist for the video art. So this is him. So Namjoon Park was a Korean American artist. He worked with various of media, and he is considered to be the founder of video art. So that is the point. He created this genre of the art. So this is his work. So Nam June Paik, internationally recognized as the father of video art, created a large body of work, including video sculptures, installations, performances, videotapes, and television productions. He had a global presence and influence, and his innovative art and visionary ideas continue to inspire a new generation of artists. So I'm going to share a video about his work of art to see how he create the video sculptures.
Nam June Paik, I knew of his art long before I saw the piece in Trenton. People say he was the father of video art. He actually did found a whole new art form.
He functioned on a level that was sort of like a Picasso or an Andy Warhol in terms of international stature.
Nam June Paik's PBS 1963 to 2000 is a spectacular video sculpture at the former NJN Public Television Building in Trenton. It was installed in 1993. The New Jersey State Council on the Arts has just spearheaded its complete restoration. Tom Moran coordinated the installation with Nam June Paik in the early 1990s, when he worked for the New Jersey State Council on the Arts.
I basically picked up the phone and called him and told him about the project. I also said that just a few miles up the road was where the Sarnoff lab was located, and that was where the television cathode ray tube was developed. He was totally on board after about the third sentence.
Lauren Otis, Executive Director of Artworks in Trenton, coordinated the restoration. Artworks is also hosting an exhibition about the video wall.
The piece is three elements. It's the neon elements, and it is the video monitors, and it is the actual content of the video monitors.
One of the modules is surrounded by languages from around the world. And this is the Paik's concern, or his celebration more so, about communication.
There are old Korean symbols, Sumerian pictograms, ancient Brahmi characters, and others.
There's certainly a lot of reference to language, which is something that he was fascinated by language. And he was speaking several languages: Japanese, Chinese, Korean, English. I believe he spoke German and French as well. He was fascinated with knowledge in general.
The second module of 26 monitors focuses on the development of the cathode ray tube. And there's a, kind of a cute little cliche image of a house. So, the idea of the cathode ray tube linked to the house, it's obviously a symbol of how important TV became.
In the content, which is very rapid fire cuts in motion, he almost does a retrospective of a lot of his collaborations. So in the video that you'll see in Trenton are John Cage, David Bowie, Yoko Ono, Charlotte Moorman, all of these artists in the world of Fluxus, one of the movements that Nam June Paik was a part of.
By the late 1990s, the old TVs and neon in the PBS video walls started to fail. The sculpture went completely dark in 2011 when the state closed NJN and decided to have Channel 13 in New York manage New Jersey's PBS affiliate. George Zenowitz of Z Signs in Trenton repaired Paik's neon symbols.
It's a lot of fun. I'm excited to be part of it. It's a rare opportunity to get to work on a huge piece of neon art by a major artist. It's a light bulb. There's like 100 neon pieces in there, and there was about 9 of them that were burned out. What happens there, it's like old-fashioned Christmas tree lighting. When one burns out, everything else on that circuit also burns out.
C.T. Louis and Rafaela Shirley from CTL Electronics in New York worked closely with Namjoon Pike and now help restore his installations all around the world. They recommended replacing Pike's old TV monitors with LED flat screens. It's not something that's been done with most other Pike restorations, but in this case, there was a compelling reason.
The masking has to move, right?
Yeah, the masking looks like it's awesome.
The artwork, which is to be on 24/7 and under direct sunlight, it was a very judicious choice to evolve towards this flat screen.
We've been working on the restoration of this piece, redoing the neon, redoing the wiring, and today the final piece, which is getting in the new acrylic, and so now you'll actually kind of be able to see the neon as it was intended. The old acrylic got crazed and kind of obscured the neon a bit. It's the ultimate gig, for sure, and peeling stuff. There's always peeling involved.
NJN Public Television interviewed Namjoon Pike in 1993 when PBS was first installed.
In my case, things are not only things, but what things can mean, not just by chance you pick up, like Duchamp arcade did. But in my case, I construct something, with that distance.
He used something that was sitting in every middle-class living room, a television set, and he turned it into something else that people looked at and began to think about what was the meaning of this to their lives. He was very interested in the democratization of art and of ideas, and felt that television was one of the great ways to do that.
So, how do you think about his work? Looks very contemporary, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, so most of the video art, we can see nowadays is just, from his work. So, in that terms, he's such an important figure in the art history. Now, let's move on to the feminism. So, the feminist organizations had originally been formed around such issues as equal rights and equal pay. Because the images are so powerful and pervasive in contemporary society, and visual culture quickly become a feminist concern, both in art and in the media. So women art professionals organized to recover women's art of the past, to push for more equitable representation in museums and the galleries, and to nurture contemporary women artists. So this artist, Judy Chicago, she is the most famous feminist artist in the United States of America. So she is an American feminist artist, art educator, and writer known for her large collaborative art installation pieces about birth and creation images, which examine the role of women in history and culture. So by the 1970s, Chicago had founded the first feminist art program in the United States. So this is Judy Chicago's dinner party work. The installation work is so huge work piece. So it is perhaps the most important work from this time. A collaborative work, the dinner party, was executed with the help of hundreds of women and several men. Arranged around the triangular table are 39 place settings, each one created in honor of influential women, such as the Egyptian ruler Hatshepsut and the novelist Virginia Woolf. The names of an additional 999 important women are written on the tile floor on the center. So I'm gonna share one more video about about her interview. So to see what's the background of the
what I wanted to do
feminist,
was I wanted to
art movement
encourage
in that
my
time.
students to do what I was then going to try and do in my own work, which was peel away the formal prohibitions to my own content. But of course, they didn't have them yet because they hadn't professionalized like I had. So they didn't have the same level of prohibition against their own content. And as soon as I gave them permission in a context, it was like taking the lid off of a boiling pot. The other really thing that I remember about this, if I can find it, is the cunt cheerleaders. My students were very exuberant. And one time we had a visit from the theorist, T. Grace Atkinson, and she came to the Fresno airport, and my students got themselves up in these costumes, these cunt leader costumes, and they did cheers at the Fresno airport as T. Grace got off the plane, much to the consternation of a convention of Shriners who were descending from the same plane. And I, of course, was like, oh my God. I mean, I'm a middle-class Jewish girl. I was trying like not to share my chagrin with my students because I didn't want to inhibit them. But at the same time, it was like, oh. But now it's become a historic picture, you know. At that time, in the late 60s, early 70s, mid 70s, for a woman to openly express her own content was extremely dangerous. It was tantamount to risking one's, well, for me, what little modest reputation I had at the time. And as a sort of, you know, wrought in the macho environment of LA art of the 60s. And faced with things like attitudes like, you know, you can't be a woman and an artist too. The idea that there was no such thing as female content, that women didn't have a different point of view. I mean, none of that was accepted. It wasn't even thought about at that time. And so what does that do? What does it do to a young woman who is raised in an environment of form, visual form that comes out of the male experience? So I was basically alone at that time and extremely isolated. And yet I was deeply committed to being myself as an artist. And so in these drawings, I tried to face the constraints of the formal language I had inherited and figure out how I could break through it, literally break through it, without sacrificing the transformation of form, you know, the beauty of form and color and line, but to find a way to be myself using it. And the drawings actually chronicle that.
Yeah. All right. So that's it for today. So this is today's discussion topic. Is it too large? Okay. So now we just saw the most famous art movement in 60s and 70s in America. So please choose one of your favorite, okay? And tell us why. So that is today's discussion. And